I'm afraid to put this Battlefield 2042 review video out because I know that some people love the game and some people absolutely hate the game. I'm somewhere in the middle. I see the game for what it is, but there's a lot of issues with the game and it's an absolute hot mess right now at launch, and I do not recommend buying Battlefield 2042 in its current state. It feels unfinished from the lack of features and visual detail. It's so buggy that you'll be forced to quit matches from time to time. Servers are rubber banding you around. It's just felt janky. There's serious bullet registration and deviation issues. There's balancing problems with vehicles and weapons. Tech issues resulting in specialists and gadgets being removed entirely for hours to days at a time. But hey,
what a time to be alive.
Straight up, Battlefield 2042 has a lot of potential, but this game costs anywhere from $60 to $110 or more, depending on where you live in the world and which platform you bought it on. First, there's the performance, which is absolutely mind-boggling. Some on old gen and current gen consoles say it runs fine at 60 FPS, and others say it runs like crap. PC players with the same hardware are also experiencing wildly different FPS values, and it's a mystery on if it's drivers being the culprit, CPU bottlenecking, background tasks running, resolution differences, DLSS, or something else entirely. I guess all I really have is my own experience, and luckily the game ran smooth for me. I didn't experience any crashes, although I did experience a lot of bugs where I'd have to literally quit the game to be able to jump into the next one. And I could never rejoin my friends. It was always some random game. I'd have to wait for them to finish, or they'd have to leave too. It was just not a good experience, and I don't want to talk about bugs yet. We'll get to that. I think first I've got to talk about specialists. I actually don't mind specialists over the class system. They have a relatively diverse set of abilities with some kind of fitting the roles of the classic class system, but there are clear favorites to choose over others. Take Sundance or McKay if you hate the scale of the maps and want to move around quicker, Felk or Angel if you want to be useful for heals or armor, Rao if you want to annoy vehicles with your wristwatch simulator, and Dozer if you want to literally be invulnerable to tank shells. Now, I'm making a little bit of fun here, but it's true. There are only a handful of specialists worth using, and McKay and Paik are locked behind the XP progression system until level 15 and 25 respectively. I thought all 10 specialists would be available at launch, which technically that is true, although it took me 19 hours to get to level 25. 19 hours to get to level 25 to unlock Paik, just to try her out. That's because I'd have to search through 5 or 6 games before I wouldn't get a persistence data load error or something, or once I was in a game, I would get stuck in a revive animation, I couldn't do anything, I couldn't click buttons, and I would have to just back out of the game entirely. But at least in comparison to the beta, it's a lot easier to tell friend from foe now, with some splashes of glowing red for enemies and blue for teammates with green for your squad. This is actually a positive, so I want to make sure I give some credit when it's due. It feels as if specialists were balanced for Hazard Zone or the Battle Royale that the game was apparently supposed to be, with things like armor and loadout drops being available as abilities. I'll get to this soon, but when you're playing Battlefield 2042, you're probably not going to be playing a whole lot of Hazard Zone because it's a barren, blank experience most of the time, but the specialists you choose for Hazard Zone actually have to be more specific than when you play All Out Warfare. Oh, and specialists are clearly targeted for monetization with outfits and headgear, which is fine at all because it doesn't affect the gameplay, but this is a full-priced game. It's not something like $20 to $30 or a free game. There's also no squad management. I can't kick people from my squad. I can't pick which squad or team I want to join because it's random, apparently. And can I even promote somebody to squad leader when I'm in the game? I don't remember. I also can't voice communicate with my squad unless I'm in a party chat or a Discord call with them because there are no squad voice comms. Another big complaint that I have around Battlefield 2042 in the squad play is the gadget system. I can't run a rocket launcher and a repair tool and be the standard engineer that I loved being in the past games. Honestly, it would be better if specialists had 2 gadgets, 1 lethal and 1 non-lethal, and for the lethal you can pick between rockets, C5, grenades, whatever. And then for the non-lethal, that would be like the repair tool, I know it's lethal, armor plates, med pack, ammo crate, proc sensor grenades, and whatever else. I will say though, there's a lot of people that say squad play is completely dead in Battlefield, and I have to check myself and know that I was playing with a squad of 2 people for the most part, 3 at times, but I did have people outside of my direct squad that were giving me health, they were giving me ammo, and they were giving me armor. So I had maybe a different experience than a lot of people. What they absolutely do need to add though for reviving is the medic indicator. I don't know how this didn't make it into the game, but it always told you who the nearest medic was and if they were coming to revive you. All right, onto Immersion. This scale of the maps, they're very, very big. They support 128 players, but they're very open with not enough cover. Because there's so little cover, you'll see this happen pretty frequently where there's like 10 people grouped up behind just a single big rock or something. You run them over with a tank, you gun them down with the helicopter, and just the flow of the map is too open. There aren't really choke points or things like that. Take Damavon Peak from Battlefield 3, for example. You jump off that massive helipad down onto the ground, and you could progress through tunnel systems. There was a flow there that made sense, and you knew which direction people were coming from. The graphics are fine. There's nothing groundbreaking, though, and a lot of structures just feel very bland once you're inside of them. And apparently, it takes a long time for some of the graphics to load on last-gen consoles. And looking at these intro cutscenes and outro cutscenes for each game, they're really cool for literally the first to maybe third time, and then they're a complete nuisance and waste of time. But I guess you need something to mask the fact that people with slower connections are still loading into the game, I guess. The sound design with these intro cutscenes and just sound design in general. The specialists, they sound a little bit corny, they sound a little bit cringy, a little cheesy.
Don't worry about me. I can take care of myself.
But the sound design in-game, footstep audio, I don't know if it's bugged, but it's hard to tell if somebody's 5 meters away or 20 meters away because it sounds like they're stepping on your ear regardless of where they're at. And it's not as crisp. Things sound muffled. The guns that you shoot, when you get a kill, it's like a muffled sound, and it's not as crisp as Battlefield 1 or Battlefield 5, and it's disappointing. And back to the voice acting thing. It doesn't really fit that gritty nature of it being a war between the US and Russia over scarce resources. It just needs to go. I don't care who got the most, whatever the hell is on the end screen, because it's not my stuff. I'd rather see a scoreboard or look at my progression for what I'm unlocking next or soon. It's like Battlefield tried to add personality to these specialists, but I have no context at all as to who these specialists are, what they do, outside of the research that I've done myself. Why do they act the way that they do?
Yeah, Angel does it again.
So I guess what I'm saying is that the sound design, the specialists, they kind of rip the immersive part of Battlefield out of it for me, but so does destruction, dynamic weather, and levolution. I will go as far as to say that levolution isn't really in Battlefield 2042, unless you consider the tornadoes and dust storms levolution. I always thought of levolution as the destruction of an environment, like in Battlefield 4 Siege of Shanghai, the entire building falls down. You don't see that in Battlefield 2042. And even Battlefield Bad Company 2, which came out 11 and a half years ago, you could destroy an entire building, an entire little town or a city, and reduce everything to rubble. It was just a different level of destruction back then. Now you've got clips of people like Shroud that are just literally bouncing off of skyscrapers.
If I like hit this building right here, let's see. Yeah, doesn't do anything. Look at that. Interesting. Huh.
And for the tornadoes, yeah, they're cool the first few times you see it, but I spent so much time riding around in tornadoes in the beta that in my 21 hours now that I've played Battlefield 2042, I have not once gone into a tornado because I want to, or I just avoid them. I guess my point is this for Immersion. In Battlefield 1, you felt like you were a foot soldier in a war. In this game, you don't feel that. And for the UI, I can't join a game in progress. There's no scoreboard or a detailed stats page. I can't resize or reposition the map. I can't zoom in on the map to see where I'm exactly at. I can't change transparencies of objectives anywhere. If you try to spot a vehicle, it just puts a red ping waypoint. I'd much rather it spot the tank on the map or like a 3D spot for a short period of time. With specialists, I get it. You don't want a bunch of spotted players running around like in past games where it's overpowered, but come on, at least for vehicles. That waypoint thing is confusing at best. And if I'm trying to spawn into a game quickly and grab a specific vehicle, I better be super lucky that I had previously selected a class that had a repair tool, because there's no way for me to go back and change which class I want to spawn into the vehicle with. And when you're spawning into a squad or teammate's vehicle, you have no idea what type of vehicle you're spawning into. I always hoped I would be spawning into an attack heli, but it always was a transport. Let's go a little bit further on vehicles. Helicopters, they're floaty, they're hard to crash. Helicopters are really noob friendly and act like gravity isn't very strong. Hovercrafts are completely dominant in their current state. They tank 3 rockets, and there's almost no reason to use the LATV for that reason alone. The anti-air tanks feel like they're significantly better than the heavy tanks, and it's just odd how everything's selected too. Like, a little bird can be selected over an entire transport Hind helicopter. And I don't think critical hits exist anymore, like shooting a tank from behind doesn't do more damage than hitting it from head on. And there were so many times that I would shoot at a tank, I would not get a hit marker, so I didn't know if I had landed a shot. And if I did do damage to the vehicle, I don't know how much damage I dealt, if it did 25% of the health, if it did 30%, if it did 10%. I would just get that 10 XP for part damage or part disabled, not knowing. It doesn't give you any information as to how much damage you've dealt. There's also very few upgrades for vehicles in comparison to past games like even Battlefield 4. And it's odd that skins for vehicles are mostly based on level and not kills or some kind of a challenge. There are some, but there are not very many. And I'm still confused as to how the vehicle call-in system works. I assume you can only call in a light vehicle or a tank if you have one available to your team. But I only ever was able to call in a Ranger. Now, all this said about vehicles, you can still have those only in Battlefield moments though.
Wrong way. Get back in the fight. We control Sector Delta.
On to Gunplay. Random bullet spread, deviation in a cone, hit reg, whatever you want to call it, that shit. It was completely fine in the beta. But there are so many hit reg issues in the game now that you're best off using something like an SMG, which seems to not be as affected by whatever is going on, that the meta is to use an SMG because they're good at close range, medium range, and even long range. Hitboxes for map geometry seem to be a little bit broken too. You won't notice this a whole lot when you're playing, but when it happens, it's frustrating. It can happen with power lines, tree leaves, and the edges of snowbanks. Now, there are some people that are criticizing the game for having only 22 weapons available in all-out warfare at launch, and that doesn't seem like that many, especially when you have something like only 2 LMGs to choose from. But I will say that because you have access to any of 22 weapons at any given time, I'd argue most people will only use a handful of weapons like they tend to in any FPS game. What I do have serious criticisms about is the plus system. Not so much in the way that it functions or that it exists, but why can't I just make a default loadout for the plus system? Why is it that every single time I load into a game, the first thing I need to do is change my weapon to all the same crap that I normally use? And I didn't learn this till later because I had to unlock more stuff, but some of the attachments have literally the same stat changes, like the grips, for example. Similar to how I liked Gunplay in the beta, I like the movement a lot more. It's just, now it's not as fluid. It seems to have gotten nerfed because of some of the feedback of it feeling too floaty, or like Apex Legends, it's now a bit more grounded and feels like Call of Duty almost exactly. But it's still a little bit more clunky. I preferred the floaty feel, but I also find Apex Legends and Titanfall movement to be the most satisfying, so I'm probably pretty biased in this regard. The grapple works okay, but the wingsuit, although extremely unrealistic, is actually really fun and satisfying to use. And although there are a lot of missing movement mechanics from prior games like Battlefield 5, I'll get to those in a little bit, I still found the movement to just be lackluster in general. As for game modes, there's no server browser, there's no private or rented servers. I was only able to play on the map Manifest 3 times in 21 hours. It just felt like I kept getting the same 3 or 4 maps most of the time, and after finishing a map, you have to go all the way back to the main lobby when you should just roll into the next game. There's a ton of downtime in between matches. For all-out warfare, Conquest is all right. The maps are too big for it, but Breakthrough was actually my highlight of Battlefield 2042. This was when I was in the honeymoon stages of playing the game in those first 8 hours where I really did love the gameplay, and I credit almost all of that to playing Breakthrough specifically. Breakthrough and Conquest are also the only relevant modes for gaining XP and ranking up right now. Hazard Zone, on the other hand, although it's fun in the moment when you come across another squad, it feels barren and like there's no point in extracting because you don't really get anything at all from the credits. There's no end game. Like, there's no point in grinding Hazard Zone because there's nothing to unlock. The AI bots are better than they were in the beta, and they do offer at least some kind of a challenge now, but there's still just a bump in the road as you move from data drive drop to drop on your way to extraction. I now understand why this game mode wasn't released as a free-to-play like some of the rumors that were out there, because if this was the experience that people had with Battlefield 2042 for free, I think there was a very, very slim chance that it would entice anybody to actually buy the full game because of how poor Hazard Zone is. It is nothing in comparison to games like Hunt Showdown and Escape from Tarkov. Okay, but at least we have Portal, right? Well, what I don't understand is how many people are praising Portal. Now, I never played Battlefield 1942, but I played the shit out of Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3. Literally just last week, I played Battlefield 3 because I was getting hyped for Portal, but it's just so bland in comparison. It's also not some remastered version of Battlefield 3 like I thought it'd be. They changed the classes to basically be reskin specialists. You're locked to a primary gadget with each class, which is not how Battlefield 3 worked. I jumped into a game or two and felt absolutely nothing. Seeing the countless custom servers filled with XP farming BS definitely was a mood killer, but I do not believe for a second that the majority of people that enjoy the older Battlefield games will buy Battlefield 2042 for an updated version of whatever they enjoyed about the past. This game or mode, it preys on your nostalgia, claiming to be a love letter to its fans, and I think a good intention was there, and I can see where Portal could have been this amazing custom editor game mode thing like the Halo 3 days of the past, but after experiencing it firsthand, it felt lifeless. There are only 6 classic maps, of which I really only care to try out Arica Harbor from Bad Company 2 and No Share Canals from Battlefield 3 because they played off my nostalgia so damn hard. And if you do enjoy playing Portal, there's basically no Portal XP progression, just like Hazard Zone, so you won't be ranking up anywhere near as fast as you would be if you're playing All-Out Warfare. And the one serious gripe that I have with Portal is that because you can't rent servers like you could in past Battlefield games, you have to have a person stay in that server or else it's going to get removed from the list of available servers. All Out Warfare, Hazard Zone, and Portal are the only modes you get with Battlefield 2042. That means you won't be seeing, at release anyway, a test range or a firing range, campaign or war stories, anything hardcore, domination, team or squad deathmatch, and I know there is no battle royale, but the game seems like it was set up to be one with things like specialists, loadout changes, armor plates, revive crawling, and Hazard Zone. The size and openness of the maps, the squad end screen saying you were X squad out of 32, and so on. Speaking of missing modes and features in Battlefield 2042, here's a somewhat comprehensive list. Levolution as we know it is pretty much gone, and movement mechanics such as rolling, crouch sprint, moving backwards while prone, leaning out of cover, fortifications, things like resupply stations at flags, being able to throw ammo and bandages, squad spawn screen in third person, nearby medics and squad mates after getting down or some kind of confirmation that someone's coming to get you, first person takedowns and large stationary weapons, commander mode, sniper rifle zeroing. If you do get a long-range sniper headshot, you don't get extra points like you used to based on range. Hell, it doesn't even tell you the range. There's also no holding your breath or steadying a sniper scope or underwater diving, and 0 naval combat, which has been a staple of a Battlefield game for a long time, and of course the scoreboard and a global chat box. And there's more, I'm sure, but it begs the question, why was all of this stuff removed? There are also some gadgets that just don't make sense to use at all anymore, especially anything around healing yourself, healing others, or healing vehicles. The delay for auto vehicle repairing or regenerating health is relatively short, so why would you bring a med kit if you can just have somebody play as Maria Falk and shoot you with their syringe? Or why even bring an ammo crate because you can just have Angel play and throw you free armor and ammo whenever you need. Same goes for the repair tools. Vehicles regen health after a short delay, and there's actually an upgrade if you play with a certain vehicle long enough, where you can initiate a self-repair that I think brings back like 20 armor, health, whatever you want to call it for the vehicle. And then we have the list of bugs. On day 1, the specialist Dozer was removed for several days because his shield wasn't working properly. Then they re-released him like this.
Yeah, it's okay, but...
A day or two later, they disabled proximity sensors because apparently those were the reason that everyone was rubber banding around on the map. People have experienced some game crashing, hovercraft stick to walls, and basically fly, which honestly, it's not that bad. I think this is like a Battlefield thing, but when you're shooting an enemy tank or a hovercraft, I don't even know if the hit was registering. You can't revive people if I think it's their head or some part of their player model is clipping through geometry, and executions seem not to register very often, so someone might spin around on you and just kill you while you're trying to stab them. And there's the infamous unable to load persistence data bug that plagued me throughout my entire 21 hours of playing so far. And that's not to mention all the hit reg issues, and I'm sure plenty of other things. I'm not going to list them all out here, it's too much. And then this is a bit of an aside, but Battlefield and some of its employees are parading around on Twitter like this game is some kind of success and they're happy to have been part of it. I don't blame the developers or the employees that are happy with the work that they did because they truly aren't the ones to blame. Usually games are pushed out seemingly early like this by management as they're trying to hit financial figures for investor calls, or they're just out of touch with what's going on in development and how it will be perceived by gamers. but somebody had to have known that this is what the launch experience was going to look like. There's no way they were blindsided by this. Okay, so all of this considered, a final rating. During the honeymoon phase, I would have given Battlefield 2042 a solid 8 out of 10. It was an enjoyable experience with a full squad of friends playing Breakthrough specifically, but I realized later that I had zero desire to play Hazard Zone or Portal, and Conquest was just a lesser experience to Breakthrough because of the sheer size of every map. What I didn't realize at the time is that I was only playing a fraction of the game at that point. And with it being $60 to $70 at an absolute minimum with the number of bugs, balancing, and hit reg issues, I'm giving my review of Battlefield 2042 a 5 out of 10 in its current state. This game has a massive potential to be much higher, and I'm going to continue playing it, but at release, it feels like an average Battlefield experience, and although it's a ton of fun, there's a lot that's holding it back from reaching its full potential. And those of us that have been playing Battlefield for 15 plus years, we know how Battlefield releases go. I'm so disappointed with this game. I wanted to defend it, but I just can't. I so desperately wanted a new game to play in the gaming drought that has been 2021 that I dove in hard, but I hit the bottom because the pool was only a couple feet deep. It astounds me that this game isn't a free-to-play title so that it could at least attempt to compete with other games, but I don't see Battlefield 2042 being worth a buy for at least 6 months, much like how Battlefield 4 released. I'm curious though what your thoughts are after you've had a chance to play Battlefield 2042, so let me know down in the comments. Subscribe if you appreciate honest reviews like this, although they hurt. Like or dislike the video if you want, because it is entirely my opinion, and I know differing opinions are okay on the internet. But in any case, I hope to see you again in the next one.